Hallo allemaal, lieve mensen. Welcome everyone, very kind, sweet, beautiful people. This video is going to be in English to help you best prepare. And I'm gonna give tips on all 4 exams. Let's start with the reading exam. The first thing to keep in mind in the reading exam that it is only 65 minutes, but there are 25 questions. What does that mean? That you have not even 3 minutes per question. So that does mean that you have to think about the time. Something that is very convenient about the reading exam is that you have 4 practice exams on the official website of Duo. So you can time yourself and you can see if you are ready and if you are able to do everything within this time. So try and time yourself in the reading one, because that's the one where if time is going to be an issue, it's going to be on this exam. How to deal with the reading exam? Well, you're going to first always, tip 1, always read the questions first. You're going to read the question and then you're going to read the text looking for the answer. So you're not going to read the entire text. That's a waste of time. You're going to look for the answer. Especially if it's an A2 exam, because the A2 is the 65 minutes. I'm talking about A2 in this video. Although you can apply the tips on different levels. On the A2 exam, they're probably not setting you up for failure by putting another answer in there and an answer that looked like the answer but wasn't the answer. So I'm going to read the question, I'm going to look for the answer. You will get multiple questions per text, so you will get to reread the text various times. And that way you do get to complete the whole text. But you're not going to read the whole text on each question. You're not going to be able to do it within the time if you do that. So you're going to read the question and you're going to look for the answer. When you are practicing, I want you to take a highlighter, a marker, and actually highlight where is the answer. Because sometimes I have students that guess the answer, and that's not the idea of reading. So I took a screenshot from the actual practice exam from Duo. I think it's allowed for educational purposes, although we cannot really spread the material. I think it's allowed to take just a screenshot. But the question is, wat moet hij volgens de tekst het eerste doen? So what is the thing that he should do first according to the text? And this text literally starts with, begin met het maken van een planning. I'm going to highlight that. That's my answer. I answer the question and I go to the next one. And yes, afterwards I get to read the whole text. Maybe there's something else, before that you should start with. That's not going to happen on A2 exams. So I'm going to look at my text. I'm going to find the answer right away. I'm going to highlight it in practice. You cannot do that in real life. And that way you're going to be correct. Remember, it is not a knowledge exam. It's a reading exam. And the same for listening. It's not a knowledge exam. It's a listening exam. Maybe something you think is true is not the answer according to the text. So you should read the text and see what the text says. So tips for your reading exam is read first the question and then find the exact phrase that is answering the question. Because there's going to be an exact phrase there for you that is answering the question. So don't guess, don't think what you assume should be the logical answer. Find the exact phrase in the text that will say the answer. Now, the reading exam should not be too difficult at A2 level. On B1, they are upping the difficulty a little bit. But do the practice exams. If anything is an issue, it's the time. So by reading the question, looking for the answer, you can become a lot more time effective. Do all 4 practice exams. Keep one for like the end. Because if you do all of them, then you've seen it before. There are a lot of questions, 25 questions. Try and not get stuck on a question. Let's imagine you don't know a single question. And you keep reading and reading and looking for an answer. Don't waste time. The moment that 3, 4, 5 minutes have passed on one question, you're just going to continue. Because maybe you can get the rest of the questions correct. Then it doesn't matter that one you didn't have the answer to. Later you can come back, you can guess, and if you have more time, you can search again for the answer. So your goal is to complete the test. Find the answer exactly the way it is. And if needed, you can later come back to the one question you were not sure about. But the goal is also to answer all the questions. So time yourself and know how you're doing with the time. Well, let's look at the next exam. And let's do some tips to pass your writing exam. First of all, the writing exam only has 4 questions. So you have about 10 minutes per question. So you would say that's plenty of time. And it is plenty of time to also check what you wrote. So I'm going to focus on checks that I want you to do on your own work. So first of all, the first thing you should check with yourself is, did I actually answer what they asked from me? You're going to get 4 exercises. There's going to be usually something for the newspaper of your little town that you live in. There's going to be a form for sure. There's going to be an email and likely another email. So there's probably going to be a formal and an informal email. We don't know exactly what will be in the exam. But there's always a task that you should say this, apologize for that, offer another time. There's always bullet points that they want you to say. Sometimes in the one with the newspaper, there's like, say at least 3 things or 3 sentences and think of, and then they have some examples for inspiration. There you can take liberty and write whatever you want. But in most of them, you have to say, oh, I cannot go to the appointment. And you must think of why. And you must offer a new date. You can think of the date yourself. So I want you to go back. Once you finish your exam, I want you to go back to what you wrote and see. And by the way, it's with pen and paper, like old school. And I want you to check, okay, point 1, I have to cancel. Did I write that? Yeah. Oh, I have to write why I write the email. Did I do that? Yeah. Okay, so I also have to explain why I cannot go. Well, I did that. Because if you don't do what they ask, then it's really hard to get the points afterwards. So that's the first thing. Check that you did what they asked from you. Second thing is that I want you to check that the subject and verb is in the logical position. Subject and verb should always be first and second, or if there's an inversion, the verb is going to be second. And if you use omdat, the verb goes to the back. Well, I do have videos on sentence structure, I have videos on omdat and also if you really want to know how all of that works, check out those videos, I will link them here. But make sure the verb and subject is in the right position, and especially the second verb should go to the back. So, ik kan komen niet morgen is wrong. Ik kan morgen niet komen. The second verb should be the infinitive and to the back. Which brings me to the third point. I want you to make sure that the form of the verb is correct. If I have I don't want to see en. Ik komen? No. Ik kom. Ik willen? No. Ik wil. And if it's he, she in it, I want to have an extra T. So, hij werkt morgen niet. And if it's a plural like we or they, I want to see an infinitive. Werken, lopen, kunnen, praten. So I want you to check, is the verb time correct? Is the position of the verb correct? And another thing that I want you to check is the spelling of my word sort of correct? What I mean with sort of correct, I don't want you to have long vowels instead of short vowels. So for example, in lopen, there is 1 O. But if it's ik loop, I have to double the O. And if I make a singular of, so ik zwem, maar wij zwemmen, there's going to be a double M. So I want you to sort of check the spelling. The difference between an F and a V is tiny, so if you make a mistake there, don't even worry about it. But the spelling of the verb should be correct. That's something that is an issue. So check that you answered the question that they asked and that your spelling of the verb, position of the verb, and form of the verb is correct. If you can put in omdat, great. Everyone loves omdat, so if you can put in omdat, do so, please. And just make sure that you do what they ask. Let me pull up the judgment form, more or less, about writing. Give me 1 second, we will continue right there. There is another document how to judge the form, but this is for the free writing, like an email. Well, the colors in bold is basically if you get everything in bold, you would pass the exam. So the bold is like enough to pass. So let's check. You're checked on 5 points. The first one is accuracy and understandability. If they cannot understand what you wrote, of course, you're not going to get any points. But if it's more or less acceptable and recognizable as you did the exercise, you already get enough points to pass. You can read the full form calmly later, of course. Then they check you for grammar, and you will get at least 1 point if the text has quite a few grammar points. How many mistakes can you make in a 3-sentence text? So if you have barely grammar mistakes, you get 2 points. But even if you make quite some grammar mistakes, I mean, it's not the end of the world apparently, grammar mistakes, you will still get 1 point. So you only get 0 if there's a lot of grammar mistakes. So if you really consistently don't conjugate your verbs, those are big mistakes. If you don't conjugate the verbs, if you don't have the right position, if it just basically is ununderstandable, you will not pass. But otherwise, you have a good chance of passing, I would say. The next one is spelling. So short words and everyday words are almost correct. And the spelling is phonetically quite correct. That's enough you need to do. So the bar is not very high. I don't want to downplay anyone taking the exam, of course. I just want to tell you that maybe you're overthinking the exam, because this is something that they should use objectively instead of subjectively to judge your writing. So check with yourself, do you think that you make quite a few mistakes? Not so much? Is it sort of okay? And you only get 0 points if it's basically just impossible to read. So if the spelling is very off, it's impossible to read. Then for vocabulary, if it's simple and sort of variated, you will get points. If it's very variated, you will get all the points. It's very hard to be very variated in your vocabulary, I think, because sometimes there's just 2 or 3 words you can use. But if there's a word you know you can throw in, great. I do think you will always get at least the minimum vocabulary. And the last one is coherency. Coherency is kind of like a bonus point. And this is where your omdat comes in handy. If you start merging things together and this, because that's when you will get this little bonus point, which we do actually want to get. We want to get this bonus point. So if you can put in omdat, do so. There is no need for you to be using want unless it's your personal opinion. You are skilled enough to use omdat. If you're not sure about omdat, check one of my videos out, but you are skilled enough to use omdat. And look, you can get some points for coherency. There's some coherency in the text. Whether or not it's with en, maar, dus, want, or hij, zij, die, dat. So up your text a little bit. But this is the objective judgment for everyone to use. So you can also judge your own text and see, would I give myself points for this or not? Or you can feed this into ChatGPT and ask him to correct yourself based on these points. Although ChatGPT is not the best in content creating, it's quite good at finding the mistakes. It's not perfect, but you can get some valuable feedback from it. Although it's best to have an actual teacher and my coworkers. But if you don't want to have a teacher, or you don't have time for a teacher, you can put it into ChatGPT. And now we're gonna forget I said all of that. Let's look at the next exam. So the speaking exam is probably one of the more nerve-wracking exams for everyone. It doesn't have to be. In speaking, you must keep it short and simple. So usually the questions in the speaking exam will be asking for 2 things. They're often asking for like, oh, what do you do? Why do you do that? What do you do? How often do you do that? What do you do that? With whom do you do that? So usually there's 2 questions there. I want you to make sure that you actually answer both of the questions, because again, if you don't do what they ask from you, you're not gonna get the points. It's really important that you actually do what they ask from you. Please just answer the question. If you don't have the word, you can try and use another word or this thing. I mean, you might lose vocabulary words, but at least you did some of the task and you can get some extra points. Don't give up. That's what I'm trying to say. If there's one question that you're not completely sure, just give it your best. Say dat ding, die persoon. If you don't have the word for apotheek, daar, die locatie, use anything you have. And just go on to the next question. And do even better on that question. But there are, again, objective forms to check your speaking exam. Like we've seen with the writing exams, there's very objective forms that say, oh, Did you do what the task is? Is it sort of appropriate for the task? Yes, you get 2 points. Well, how is your pronunciation? Is it understandable for a trained listener? Yes, okay, you get the points. Well, how is the vocabulary? Okay, you get the points. How is the grammar? You get the points. So again, it's very objectively. When you are doing speaking, I suggest you pause for a second, you think for your answer, and then you say your answer. If you're doing A2, you can actually pause, wait, record, re-record. You have all the time in the world, but not all of the time in the world, of course, because there is a time limit. What I've seen with my students, although they usually do these practice exams when they're almost ready for the exam, is that they have more than enough time left. Speaking wise, for my students, the time has never been an issue. However, I want you to do the official test exam on Duo and see for yourself, is time my enemy or not? And if it is very tight, maybe continue practicing with these kind of questions, or rush through it if you already have the exam and don't want to postpone it. But make sure that you at least answer all of the questions, because it would be a waste if you didn't answer 10 questions, you lost all those points, right? So don't get stuck on those questions. Now, I want to more give tips how to prepare for your exam. Because we know there's going to be 4 different kinds of questions. There's going to be open questions, where likely you might have to use omdat or a frequency 2 keer per week. So practice a little bit with omdat. If you know omdat, you're good to go for all the exams. In the second part, there's always going to be 2 pictures. In the second part, there's going to be 1 picture where often you have to describe things. So we need to have some adjectives like blue. Don't overcomplicate it. If you have to say 2 things about the picture, you can say, oh, there's a man wearing a blue shirt and there's a woman speaking with a red shirt. That's already 2 things I said on the picture, right? So if you don't have the word, just say something else. Of course, if you can exactly say what you're seeing, great. But if you're not able to vocalize that, say any 2 things that you see there. And I want you to practice on comparing, because you're going to get 2 pictures. There's 4 questions that are going to be 2 pictures, and you have to choose. Which one would you rather? So you're going to work with liever, het liefst. So graag, well, we already know graag. Ik ga graag naar het park. Ik wandel graag in de avond. So you have to work on graag, liever, liefst. And comparing. Because why would you rather have wanting? Well, because it's cheaper, calmer, more expensive. That's maybe why I would not want it. So you need to know how to make the extra. Groot, groter. Leuk, leuker. En het leukst, het grootst, het mooist. Because you're always going to be comparing. So you need to know those. Then in the end, you're going to have 3 pictures. Usually you have to say 1 thing about each picture. They're going to be about day-to-day life. Best to prepare for this is just get your vocabulary in check. Make sure you know things about everyday life, about cleaning the house, and also about some lower skilled jobs. I'm also not saying that in any way negative, but I do feel like the Inburgeringsexam is focusing a lot on the lower education jobs, like hairdresser, car mechanic, plumber, receptionist. They're really focusing not really on the scientist, but more on the cleaner, the shop attendant. So try and think, what would these everyday people do in their job? What do they have to do? Do they have to cut hair, wash hair, brush the floor? Make sure you have your professions and what they do. If you have all of that, you're set to go. You're gonna nail the exam. I have not had any student yet that did not pass. Okay, maybe they did do some attempts before they came to me, but I have never had anyone not pass the exam. Because once you have the right approach, you got this. Answer the question and have some set answers. Bla bla bla, omdat, bla bla bla. Ik heb liever dit, omdat, ik heb liever... You could even say you prefer the right picture. Ik heb liever het rechterplaatje, omdat... Maybe you don't know what the thing is on the picture. So you could say, I prefer to have the right picture because this and this and this. Have some escape phrases and be prepared. And then believe in yourself. If you believe in yourself, you guys got this. I'm not gonna re-look at the whole judgment form for speaking. I did link both of them in the description, so you can check out how they judge your exam. So if you know how they judge your exam, I think it's a lot more comfortable because you know what they're looking for and how you're gonna get the points, and you can make a more realistic judge yourself. Or you can make a more realistic judge when you ask a friend to help you check the answers that you want to give. Or you can bring this form to your teacher, as he can check with this form how you're doing. Although your teacher should probably know the form. And let's look at the last exam. So how does it work with luisteren? Well, it's the same as with lezen. You have to make sure you know first what is the question, so you can be actively listening to your answer. You're not going to be listening the whole thing, remembering it, and then know the answer. No, you have to know the question, actively listen for the part where, oh, this is going to be my answer, and then answer the question. Again, go and check out the practice exercises, because there you can see, how am I doing on time? How am I with this audio quality? How am I doing with this particular speaker? Because maybe your teacher is easy to follow because she speaks very slow. And then on the exam, it's a lot harder because it's a strange voice. So practice with the official voices of the exam and check, how am I doing in time? Am I doing good? Could I have a little bit extra time? So do the official exams for sure. With luisteren, there's a website called, actually also for lezen, there's a website called lingua.com. Now there's a few free texts that you can actually read. It's not my website. I'm not affiliated with them in any way, but I send my students there and it's good for them to practice, and I see them improve as they go through those texts. There is a premium plan, which I think is €10 a year. I don't know. You get a lot more text. You get maybe 30, 40, 50 texts, but you have 10 free texts. You have listening exercises with exams, and you also have reading exercises with some questions. So if you want to practice your listening, I also recommend this website, Lingua. Listening, there's not so much tips other than stay calm, believe in yourself, search for the answer, and pay attention to your time. And practice. If you've practiced listening, you're gonna nail this. And I almost forgot about the KNM exam because I said last exam before. On the KNM exam, you're gonna get 40 questions. Yeah, I know. It's a lot of questions. The KNM one could potentially be an issue time-wise. If you overthink the question, it could become an issue. The good thing is they have a new format on the KNM exam. It's no longer like, what would you do? Before it was a lot, what would you do in this situation? What would you do? This is happening. The neighbors are fighting. What would you do? You're not agreeing with your manager. What would you do? It's a bit more factual, thank God. If you are preparing for your KNM exam, there's probably going to be different books. You can get a book that will prepare you. You can do the practice exams, of course. And the website Naar Nederland, which is an official website from the government, has 100 questions that prepare you for this KNM exam. So I recommend you to study those 100 questions to know all the information there. If you know all the information there, you're going to do just fine on the KNM exam, I think. But prioritizing. So you're going to get 6 questions, maybe, on health. So if you're going to get more or less 6 questions on health, okay, that's more or less important. But you're only going to get 3 about omgang, normen en waarden, which is how we interact with each other. What is normal, what is socially acceptable in the Netherlands. So that's not so much a priority for you when you are studying. The health system is a priority for you. But how we deal with each other, like if we handshake, if we hug, if we can marry whoever we want, it's also common sense a little bit. But it's not your priority when studying. Instanties, which is like all the offices, all the agencies and things that can help you, there's going to be maybe 7 questions. So that's an important one, yes. The problem is this covers everything. Unemployment, pension, gemeentehuis, IND, belastingdienst. It's things that maybe even Dutch people have never had to interact with because they've never been unemployed, because they've never been sick at work, because they're not yet retired. So yeah, read up on that in your book. Look at all the instances and know what do they all do, basically. Werk en inkomen, so jobs and income, is 8 or 9 questions. It's an important one because there's 40 questions and 20%-ish is work and income. So know how the work works, know how the contracts work, know your rights, know your minimum hours, your holiday day. Know a little bit everything about work. Focus on that chapter, for sure. Then wonen, like living, doesn't have too many, maybe 3 or 4. It's not a priority. Although, yes, look a little bit into it, read a little bit, not the end of the world if you don't know all of it. Then onderwijs en opvoeding, so education and like how you grow your kids, it's also 3. So although everyone says no, the school system, yeah, no, the school system, no, the basisschool, no, that you have to go with 5-year-olds to the school until 16 if you have a diploma, and otherwise it's until 18. Know that. But more important for me is work and income, which is 8 or 9, which for me is a lot more important. I don't know about you. Geschiedenis and geografie, so history and like geography is 5 or 4 questions. So it's also going to be more or less important. Know a little bit about the history. This is all going to be in those 100 questions from Naar Nederland. So read that and you got this. And then staatsinrichting and recht, so like how our whole government is working, is probably 5 questions as well. So it doesn't weigh too much. But know that we have a king, know that every 4 years we have elections, know those kind of things. So basically you can have, I have it written down, but of course I started moving my notes, of course, typical. Right, so you need to get 28 out of 40 questions correct. So when you're doing my practice exams on the KNM, also check if you have at least 32 before you present to the exam, maybe. But you need to have 28 out of 40 correct. But also, that's a lot of mistakes. You can make 12 mistakes. That's a lot of mistakes you can make. Especially when a few of the questions are going to be so logical. Like, are you allowed to beat your woman? No, of course you're not. Are men allowed to marry each other? Yeah, they are. Since April Fool's Days, actually. I don't know why we did that change in law on the 1st of April, but okay. Right, that was it for this video. Good luck. I hope these tips were a little bit helpful and made you feel a little bit calmer and prepared for the exam. Check out all my practice exams and good luck on preparing with the exam. Doei doei!